Hello, hello. Welcome to Media Queen TV. I'm Aldwyn, Altuney, and we have Marc Nuss with us today. He's an amazing guy. He's actually the partnership manager for Destiny Rescue. I'll let you know a little bit about him before we chat with him today. And because we have a hot topic, it's child trafficking exposed. It's hard to believe what is happening out there in the world right now, and Marc is going to reveal all today and give us some amazing insight into this area. Now, Marc has carried a deep interest and compassion for the underprivileged and vulnerable for most of his life. He has 3 daughters and a son of his own, and experiencing firsthand the plight of young women caught in human trafficking. He is passionate about his role in Destiny Rescue and is determined to make a difference. Destiny Rescue is a not-for-profit organisation which started in Australia over 20 years ago, and it's dedicated to fighting the trafficking and sexual exploitation of children in 10 different nations. Their highly trained agents run covert and raid rescue operations day and night to locate and rescue children being used and abused. Within the ongoing support of generous donors, Destiny Rescue has successfully liberated over 9,000 individual victims of human trafficking. They have been instrumental in the closing of many bars, clubs, and brothels known to be targeting children for sex work, and have seen numerous perpetrators prosecuted. Their tireless work has also helped keep hundreds more young ones from entering the sex trade through various local community prevention programs, and delivered justice and care for those who have been rescued. Wow, amazing work, Marc. Congratulations on the phenomenal work you've done in this area. Now, for those who don't know much about child sex trafficking and what this is all about, can you let us know a bit of background about child trafficking and how bad is it right now?
Yes, well, thank you so much, first, Aldwyn, for having me here and giving me this opportunity to talk about which is a serious subject, but we are at Destiny Rescue, we're very passionate being involved in it. Within your intro, we've been doing it for 20 years, and so how the whole sex trafficking industry, part of what fuels it and how it started is sex tourism. So you'd have men traveling from all over the world into these different countries, and their main purpose for their traveling is sex tourism. And so the Sydney Morning Herald, I think it was in 2008, had an article where they worked out roughly that year that about nearly 200,000 Australian men travelled as sex tourists to a lot of these Southeast Asian countries, purely for the reason for sex tourism. So it's all about money. In the end of the day, this whole industry got created by sex tourists, and so now it's grown. The illegal sex industry has grown to a 99.5 billion a year industry. So it's the fastest growing illegal industry in the world and the second largest in sheer size and volume. And so between 73 and 74% of all children trafficked in the sex industry alone happens in the Asia Pacific region, and that's where predominantly, like your intro said, we operate in 10 different countries. That's predominantly where we operate in. So very like 20 years ago, if I could just give you a bit of background how we started. About 20 years ago, we got started by a gentleman called Tony Kerwin, and he was in Thailand and overheard 2 guys bragging that they got offered 2 girls to basically have sex with them and do whatever they wanted to with them for the whole night. And that really rocked his world, because at that stage also he was the father of young girls, and he started researching it and realized what a big issue it is. And so from that moment on, and also in the early days, we learned we've got to go where they are. You can't sit on the sideline. You've got to literally go and look for them, because if they had ability to say, "Here I am, help me," they would have been helped, but they don't have that ability. So we started going. We realized we've got to go undercover, and so our guys all across these nations, we've got permanent undercover teams that will go undercover, acting like they're sex tourists, and going to bars and brothels and every dingy dark hole they can find, looking for these children that have been trafficked into these places. And so it's Southeast Asia, like I said, is probably where the highest percentage of these trafficked children are. But we also operate as Destiny Rescue in Africa now, and also in Central South America as well, and in countries like Dominican Republic, etc. So we've been very, very busy with our rescues. We're already sitting at over 9,000 rescues so far as an organization. This year alone is already 1,300 plus rescues. And I also like we rescue from as young as 8-month-old babies, every single age up. And that's what a lot of times people don't understand is that there's unfortunately no age is too young for a lot of times with these traffickers. And one of the questions we get asked, do we rescue adult women? And of course, if we come across adult women that have been trafficked into the sex industry, so they're there against their will, and forced to do things they never dreamt they would have to do, we'll also rescue them when we come across their paths. It's the same if you've got, surf lifesavers. They don't swim up to a person who's drowning in the ocean and going, "How old are you?" And they go like, "Oh, I'm 22." So, "Oh, sorry, too old," and turn around. Likewise, if we come across an individual that's been trafficked, even if they're an adult, we will rescue them. But our focus is our children. So I don't know if that was much of an interview.
As young as 8 months. That is insane.
Yes.
And how do you actually get them out of these scenarios? I mean, these people that traffic them probably think they own these children.
Yeah.
How do you work with that?
Well, we've got different ways how we do it. And so probably the first one is one of our forms of rescue is COVID rescues. So with COVID rescues, what it is our undercover agents will like we said before, act like they're sex tourists, and they'll go into these bars and brothels and then look for children that have been trafficked into these places. And then once they find a child, they'll basically assess and work out her age and assess the situation and then a lot of times we'll set them up to risk, and then we'll rescue them out of those places. But all our rescues in those cases are covert, so the traffickers don't know we're there, and they don't know we actually rescuing the children out. So for all they know is suddenly one of their children disappeared and went missing, and they don't know, and they don't know where or who, and so that's how we operate a lot of times. And unfortunately, also for your listeners and viewers, also just gonna, a lot of times these lives, we live now in a society where I never thought we would, but where a life is truly, and these children's lives are truly seen as a commodity. They're just an object to fulfill a desire. So the sex tourists, they'll see those girls purely as an object to fulfill their desires and their lusts. The traffickers see them only as a commodity that they can sell over and over and over. And to give you an example is in one of our, we actually we had this little undercover video that we had at one stage, which showed where our one of our rescue agents was sitting next to a girl. So he's acting like a sex tourist, right? So he's in this bar and he got offered this 14-year-old girl. And part of fulfilling this role, they had negotiated a price for her. So he negotiated a price to have this girl for the whole night and do whatever he wants to do. He negotiated a price, and then at the end of the negotiation, the traffickers were like, "Oh, do you want to buy a beer?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'll have a beer." As it looks, he's meant to be there and everything, and so he orders a beer. And here's the thing to show you that for these traffickers and these pimps, that child is only a commodity. Is the price of that beer, that one beer, was more than that girl for the whole night, that 14-year-old for the whole night. So For them, if a child goes missing, it's just like a bottle of beer that's broken, that's gone missing. So much so that we can go to the same location over and over and rescue girls and children without the traffickers realizing that's what we're doing. So that's the COVID rescues. And then we've also got a thing what we call raid rescues. Now, raid rescues, over time, we worked out who to work with. Like I said, we've been doing this for 20 years. So over time, we've built up relationships with different federal and specialist police units in different countries. And then what we'll do is we'll actually set up a place for a raid. So if we find a place that's really actively dealing with children and trafficking them and selling them, we'll actually set up a raid. So we'll gather evidence and a whole bunch of things. Don't want to give it too much away, but then we'll organize a specific raid with the federal police unit that will come in and on a specific day raid the place, close the place down, traffickers get taken into custody, and everybody that's been trafficked into that establishment gets set free, and the place gets shut down. So with that also, there's a cause and effect also for those traffickers. There's a consequence for them for what they're doing. So, and then we've also got, I'll add maybe just one more. I can talk for hours what we do, but we also another form of rescue that we've got is preventative, is a type of rescues, which is one of them is with our border rescues. So with border rescues, we operate in Nepal, and what we do is we stop children being trafficked across the border into neighboring countries. So Nepal's got this long, porous border, and so our agents work with the Nepalese border control, and we're allowed to, our ladies are allowed to, that work for us, allowed to go onto buses, and if they see something that looks fishy, they can ask those people to actually come off the bus and to separate the adult and the children and interview them separately. Also, some of these borders, they literally just walk across. There's basically just a little boom gate, or and sometimes it's like cities, towns have grown together. So one part of the town is in one country, the other one is in Nepal. So in those places, we're allowed to stop people and interview them. And we've stopped so many just before they got trafficked over. So if you don't mind, I'll give you a quick example, actually, with one of our Nepalese rescues. With one of our Nepalese rescues, we had this a lady, and I just want to let everybody know, when I use names, it's made up names. We do not use the original names of our girls that we rescue. But here, to give you an example, here was a girl, Rihanna, and so what happened is she was with her dad. She was 21 years of age already. Like I said, if we'll stop even those that are adult women getting trafficked across, or even adult men, if they're being trafficked. But Rihanna was with her dad on a bus and met this guy from a neighboring country. So she's in Nepal on this bus, just going with her dad to a job that he had, and this businessman on the bus started talking to them and said, "Hey, I've got this amazing job for your daughter." And he said, "Listen, all we need is, we'll need your passport and a few things, but we'll organize everything." And it just sounded like an amazing opportunity for her. So even the dad was suckered into this, and so not knowing that they were dealing with actually a trafficker. So these guys, a lot of these guys are very opportunistic. So here they were promising work for it, but it was in the neighboring country because they want them to cross the border. Once they cross the border, it's literally, they disappear forever. It's like once they go across the border, it's trying to find a needle in a haystack. And they'll lie. They'll promise jobs. You'll even have, even through Facebook, they'll create fake Facebook profiles and then it'll be this Bollywood-looking, gorgeous-looking young man, a profile that they created just to try and hoodwink teenage girls to kind of nearly build an online relationship, and then usually they'll ask them to come over to meet his family or whatever. But anyway, so in this case with Rihanna, a job was promised. She then was ready to go, got her passport ready, and they told her, and the man that she was speaking to and on the phone said, "Why don't you cross the border and I'll meet you on the other side," which should be a red flag for them. But anyway, we stopped her right on the border. We showed her that you're just literally a couple of feet away from entering into real dangerous territory. Once she started explaining who he is, we could show her that he was actually a well-known trafficker, and that she and her dad, they actually opened up a case against him, and he somehow got hold of them through phone and tried to bribe them to stop the case against him. But but here's the thing: we ended up helping Rihanna, and we helped her then because the need she had was for work. So we helped her then with finding work, and also helping her with a bit of education and helping her. And now she's got a job as a police officer, and she patrols the exact area that she was being trafficked out of. And now she's helping her fellow citizens because she knows what to look out for. And so that's one of the cases we've got, just from that point of view. But if I can go back, if you don't mind, I'll give an example of what happens to a lot of our girls and just the process that we go through.
Sure.
if you don't mind. So I'll
Sure.
tell. I just got to warn. Maybe this is going to be, for some people, this might be a bit heavy, this story, but this gives you an example of what a lot of our girls actually go through. So we had I usually give the example of the story of Cassie. Now, once again, it's not her real name, but Cassie. Cassie was she was in Thailand, and what happened is she lived in a rural area. Her parents were farmers, but they were having some problems. The harvests weren't so good, so they battled looking after their family. She was part of 7 siblings, and so they asked her when she was 14. The parents came to us, listen, Cassie, do you mind going looking for work and help us as a family, because they were really struggling. And so Cassie said, yes, I'll help. So she stepped out of school thinking it's only going to be a temporary problem to fix. So she went and spoke in her local village. She spoke to a friend and said, hey, do you know where I can find work? And her friend naively said, why don't you just go to the bigger city? So the biggest city was three and a bit hours drive away from where they lived. So Cassie naively went and got a lift on the back of a truck, or in the Australian vernacular, a ute, and she got a lift on that. 3 hours later, the truck dropped her off at what they call like a bus stop, but it's not the way we understand bus stop. It's more like a drop-off point, like a central drop-off point. So dropped her off there, and so Cassie, she's being dropped off in the middle of nowhere, but she's thinking in her mind she's going to try and find work as a waitress or washing dishes in a restaurant, those are the type of jobs she was thinking. And so as she got dropped off, once again, very opportunistic, there was a half moon shape around a ring of bars around the drop-off place. And a manageress in one of the bars saw that Cassie was dropped off and saw that she was on her own, walks out of the bar, walks up to her and basically just says, I can see you look a little bit lost. Can I help you? And Cassie, naive 14-year-old girl just said, yeah, I came here looking for work. She said, oh, do you want to come and work at my bar? No, no concept or idea what this manager is even talking about. And she said, you want to come work for my bar? And Cassie's like, oh, well, lucky day. And she says, yes. And she goes, and this lady walks back across to her bar with Cassie, and they go into the bar area. And she said, listen, your job only is all we need you to do is just speak to our customers, and let them buy drinks, and then every now and then you'll go on a date with a customer. So that, even for Cassie, she actually didn't even understand what that meant. So they take her into the bar, and then the lady said, this is where you're going to sleep. And so it takes her into basically a hallway, and there's these little rooms all off the hallway. She opens the room and leads her into that room and says, and there's a bed, like just one bed in the room, and it's on the bed lies a little skimpy outfit. And she said, this is your bed, and this is what you need to wear, and closes the door. And so when Cassie sees the skimpy outfit, she's really confused. She's not sure what's going on. And unfortunately for Cassie, and this is where I just got to warn people, part of the story, but we've got to realize what our girls go through. And so what happened is, next minute she hears footsteps down the hallway, and a door opens, and four to five men walk in, and basically, I won't go into details instead, but just say they come in to break her in, and she fought them off with all her might, but they beat her up, and then for quite a long period proceeded to do what they wanted to do. But here's the thing. Here you've got a vulnerable girl, didn't know what she was going into. Now the most horrendous thing in her whole life is happening to her. But while this is happening, they were videoing it for twofold, to use it as control over her, to say, we're going to show this to your family, to your village, to people. So use shame and guilt, which is not hers to keep, but that's how but also secondly, they use it to sell it on the dark web, and also even to pornographic sites. So
Wow.
and so that's one thing I want to say. Sometimes people watch, there's pornographic material what people can watch on the internet, but some of them, they don't realize those women in there are actually doing something that they they're being violated, and they never dreamt something like that would happen. So here you've got a girl. So by the time we found Cassie, she already had been there for 4 or 5 months, and when our agents found her and saw her, obviously first meeting, she thought they were just another dirty Johns coming in to abuse her, and she could not look them in the eyes. Here was a broken girl that was in trauma, and had no hope. And so when our guys found her, soon after meeting with her and talking to her, we quietly offered her to explain to her quietly what we were doing, why we were there, and offered to rescue her, which Cassie obviously said yes. And then we proceeded to kind of get her out of there and disappeared with her in the night, and then took her to in all our countries we've got rescue centers, or places that we can take them to for their first initial setup. And so we disappeared with her in the night and took her to our closest rescue center. And what we do a lot of times is we'll actually text or phone ahead and let the other girls know that are there at that stage at our rescue centers, let them know that a new girl's coming in. And so what had happens then is when we drove into the compound through the gates, there were the other girls that were already staying there with us, there to greet her. And when she saw the other girls, just this total rush of emotions came rushing out of her, and nearly over the top, just her reaction when she saw these other girls. And so we took her in and introduced her around, and then went and showed her bed and said, this is your bed, this is where you stay. And this is what she did, is what a lot of the girls do, is once she went to sleep in her bed, she slept for 2 days. Wow. 2 days, just got up to go to the bathroom, didn't do anything, but just kept on sleeping. Because if you think of it, for the first time in a long time, she had a bed that was safe. She didn't have to worry about the footsteps coming down the hallway. She didn't have to worry about the creak on the door, but she was in a safe place. And then once she had gone through those 2 days of just sleeping, and then we do a bit of we get her to talk then to our workers, and they were kind of interviewing. And one of the questions they asked us, like, your reaction was so over the top when you saw when we brought you in. And then Cassie admitted, she said, the first time when I said yes to go with you guys, I actually didn't believe that you guys were there to rescue me. But it was so bad for me, I thought to myself, if I die, what's the worst that can happen? I can die, but nothing can be as bad as where I am now. So when she saw that what we said was the truth, that's what enacted that total reaction. And then, so that's only the start of the girl's journey. The rescue is only the start, because also what we've got is what we call pathways of. What we do is we assess them, give them trauma counsel, medical help, because unfortunately some of the children we'll rescue and some of the adults we rescue have got venereal diseases. In certain communities that we operate in, they'll believe if they sleep with a virgin, they'll be cured from their venereal diseases. But all they've done is laid that all on that poor child. And so you've got things like AIDS and other illnesses, and even, if you think of it, they've been basically raped so many times. They've got a lot of medical stuff that needs. So we help them with that, with those immediate needs. And then we assess each child, and we set them up on what we call individualized pathways of freedom. So each child is different. So, for example, if it's safe for them, if we work out and after interviewing them and work out that the parents had nothing to do, like Cassie's point of view, the parents had nothing to do with her being trafficked. She was purely looking for work, and the traffickers got hold of her and forced her into doing something she never dreamt she would have to do. And if they want to go home, then we'll set them up. Their pathway of freedom will look different. Then there are those that it's not safe to go home. They've got to stay with us. Then they'll stay with us. And then we'll work them another pathway of freedom for them. But it can include, the pathway of freedom can include vocational training, education, because we want to get them to a place where they can choose their own destiny, not the one they were railroaded into. So sometimes what we'll even do is if it's safe for them to go home, we'll actually, and the financial the financial need was why they went looking for it. We'll put them for a while on what we call it could be a stipend or even a like type of a bursary, but part of the requirements would be that she goes to school, because we want to make sure education is one of the keys. We want to make sure that these children end up in a place where they, like I said before, they can choose their own destiny, not the one they were forced into. And then we've also got vocational training, because sometimes you've got to give them the tools. We believe in the principle of teach them, feed a man a fish, you feed them for one day, but teach them how to fish, you feed them and their family for the rest of their lives. So we've got so many different directions they can go into. I'll just give you a quick example, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Please interrupt me.
No, this is great.
When I get going, I just like 1,000 things flowing through my mind.
No, well, let it flow. Keep going, Marc.
So I'll give an example. At one stage in Cambodia, for example, we rescued these two sisters, and sometimes they'll split up sisters. But we were fortunate; both sisters were together. We rescued them, and we realized that they wanted to go back to their village. So we've got to give them some vocation that they can use in their village, and so they're still teenagers, girls, and so if they've got a vocation, then they can also, go back to school and work it in. So what we had in Cambodia, for example, we did an in-house training for beautician school, becoming a beautician. Now, beautician, we can't think now in the Western sense, because beauticians a lot of times and beauty salons are, very plush, beautiful surroundings. But so in that school, they got trained to do hairdressing, become hairdressers, makeup, manicures and pedicures. Actually, when I was there in Cambodia at our one center there, the girls practiced on me, and they painted my nails this dark purple, and then hit the things to clean it. And I was walking around in Cambodia for 2 days with these painted nails. But they at least got a good kick out of, so that was good. At least I was the entertainment for the 2 days. But and we actually went with our permanent undercover guys. I went actually undercover with these painted nails. So it was there was a few rolled eyes when I would walk through and they would see my nails. But anyway. So we would train them up in those, and so once they trained and they pass the course and they get their certification, we'll then give them equipment and all the materials they need to start up their own little business. So these two sisters went back to their village, and they in the town center they started their own beauty salon. And beauty salon, just got to explain how it looked. It was literally a wooden shack with if the top was on top of the roof, it means the salon was open. If the top was down in the front, it means it was closed. So, but they're making enough money there, not only to look after themselves, but also their extended family out of that business. So that's just one example. And then we forgot also, I'll use Cambodia as an example as well. In Cambodia also, we had this patisserie, for example, because every child will go different directions, and we try and marry it up with what they'll enjoy, or what they're, the best way they'll go. And what happens is we've got this patisserie, and Cambodia's got this French colonial background, history, and so this was a patisserie, and they did a lot of French style patisserie, and I mean their creations were absolutely fantastic. I think they came like second or third in some international competition. That's how good their products are. And they would take on the girls that want to, and they'll go and do a 2-year course being trained up to becoming fully fledged patisserie chefs. And I've tasted some of the creations that our girls created, and seriously, like my wife was like, trust you to find a cake shop in the middle. You can't see on the video, but you can see I enjoy my food. All right, so
yes.
But these things seriously was the best cupcakes I've ever tasted, and I'm not being biased. It's that good. And so the girls get a chance to be trained up as patisserie chefs, and then quite good, strong, big restaurants actually have got a high demand for these girls then coming to work for them permanently as patisserie chefs. So that's giving you one example there of where they end up with. And And then also, can I give you one more other example?
Sure.
Is because this is one of the exceptions. So a lot of times we'll find work for them if they don't want to study, but they're already at that age where they can work. We'll find them good, secure, and safe work. So we spend a lot of time trying to find the right partner groups that we can partner with, But one of the examples where we had one of our girls she wasn't in one of our rescue centers, and she it like there was just nothing she was taking to, and so we were kind of trying to our social workers were trying to work at what can we put her into. And then one of our social workers saw that when she was on her own in her own quiet time, she would sit down and just do these amazing drawings. And we're like, wait a minute, that's the key, that's her key for her pathway of freedom. And so what we did is we went and looked for an art school that we could get her into. And the best one we could find was an art school that specialized in the Japanese style of art. And we're like, okay, well, we don't know if that's a perfect way for her, but at least we found a real good school. And so we got her in there. And she got trained up in a Japanese style of art, and she really excelled, learned well, did well. And she ended up going through the school, passing, did it all. And we thought, all right, you've graduated now, but what now? So we'll have to find a work for you. And as it would happen, international movie studio was setting up a digital animation program in the country. We found out about it. They were taking interns in. And so we got her an interview. So a lot of people went for interviews, and she was one of the few that got picked for the internship. She got there, and that's where they trained them up to take their style that they would have been doing on paper, etc., and transitioning into digital format. And I'm very happy to say that she after her internship, got given a permanent job as a digital animator. So
Wonderful.
So our girls end up in so many different, you name it, in so many different career paths and different places. And what's amazing for us now, because we've been doing it for over 20 years, is that wasn't the mindset initially. You're just focusing, you want to rescue these schools because some of the plight of these schools are just horrendous. And you want to rescue them. So that's your focus, rescue them and then help them, set them up on their pathways of freedom. But now doing it for 20 years, we start seeing the generational effect. So now these schools have got their own families, their own careers, and their own children. And their children are now starting at a level their parents never ever dreamt they would have actually been in. So you can see that whole generational effect and change. And also, I use the word girls a lot. We do rescue boys as well, but still, I would say the difference is probably still in the high 90s are girls because of sex tourism, the demand and supply. So the demand are for girls. But just to see now that change, and in some communities there's also a bias against girls, especially with education. So a lot of times we've got to make sure that even if they go back home, that girl still, if there's a stipend provided, that money is still there, and the girl's still got to go to school. So you kind of be protect them all the way through sometimes with these communities, and then then we've also got one of the things I wanted to just give an example. We were also in the onset of the year when COVID started, we also started doing some online rescues. And our first example of that was we had what happened is the English police raided a suspected pedophile's house in England. They found on his phone a video of a 2-year-old boy being molested by his stepdad. He bought that video on the dark web. So the English police couldn't work out exactly where, but they worked out listening to it and watching it, realizing that this video must have been from the Philippines. So they contacted the National Bureau of Investigation, the NBI in Philippines, and started working together. And then National Bureau of Investigation handed the file over to us. Our guys infiltrated the website that this person, this Filipino man was selling these videos of this 2-year-old boy, and started communicating with him. And what the stepdad was also doing is, it was still just before the final flights were being cancelled. he was still looking for kind of pimping out his 2-year-old son for pedophiles to fly in and come and abuse him. And so we basically acted like, as if, although we were in the Philippines, we acted like we were a pedophile that was flying in from Australia. And we set up a meeting in a hotel lobby. And what we did is beforehand cleared it off civilians. And so in the hotel lobby, when this stepdad brought in this 2-year-old boy to hand him over to a pedophile to go up to the room and do whatever he wanted to do with him, in the hotel lobby was the National Bureau of Investigation officers. There was some officers from the English police, as well as our undercover agents. And we set it up that as soon as money got handed over, and he handed over the child to one of our undercover agents, immediately all the agents in there formed this human barrier between him and the child. He got arrested. His wife was involved in it as well, got arrested and taken into custody and into jail. And that 2-year-old boy got set up on his own little pathway of freedom as well. And so with that, so that's an area that we also started going into. Have you got any questions further? Because I can keep on talking about this.
So many stories, Marc. Wow, this is phenomenal. I just want to thank all the people who are watching right now. We've got Jacob Jones, who's one of the co-hosts for the Tech Webcast podcast we did for a few years together in the US, is saying, keep up the great work. And we've got Rashid. Hello, Rashid. Good to see you. He says, great work, Marc. He says, thank you, Aldwyn, for highlighting the great work. My pleasure. Susan Day is with us. Hello, Susan. Good to see you. Katrina's sharing the love. Katrina's put Michelle in there. Hopefully you're joining us too, Michelle. And Susan's saying here, how could someone hand over their child to be molested? Well, I guess often they don't know the child's going to be molested. But what, this 2-year-old, like, what's the story there, Marc?
Well, it was purely financial. And it's obviously there's a disconnect that they, the stepdad, and then obviously convinced the mother it's the right thing to do. So a lot of times it's just pure greed, just finances. Not all parents, I just got to put it this way, not all parents hand over their children or sell them. Although we have cases, we had like an aunt who took over. One of the girls were rescued. Her parents unfortunately died. The aunt took over her care from a young age. But when she was around 12, she didn't realize her aunt was actually feeding her hormone tablets to make sure things grow. And she already had pre-sold her to a trafficker. So she was just putting her already. And sold her to the trafficker, but we ended up rescuing her. So, so you get those cases, but majority of the time is they go looking for work, or the family's struggling. And even like an 8-year-old or 7-year-old is looking for work. And unfortunately, during COVID, what COVID's really done is also create this pressure on a lot of families around the world. So because of suddenly their income sources weren't there anymore. So you'll have maybe a dad who would travel around for work. So suddenly you couldn't travel. They were, the lockdowns and everything. And so they would put severe pressure on the families. And what we as DCRC even had to do, just purely to try and stem this avalanche that we could see coming once everything opens up, that there will be all these children getting themselves in trouble and being trafficked into the sex industry. We even started a food feeding program. We're not set up to be a food agency, but we did. So because we've got contacts in a lot of the villages, we would speak to the village elders and find out, especially those areas where we knew a lot of kids were being trafficked out of. So we try and stop it by education and preventative work. But one of the works we had to do was basically provide food packages just to keep family units together. So, but yes, now, unfortunately, like our guys are on in our countries, because when COVID hit, we offered all our permanent undercover guys. We said, you want to go home to your families? And everyone just said, no. These children are going to get a chance to go home, so why should we? So we kept on rescuing right through COVID. We had to adapt our programs. We adapted because the traffickers adapted. They didn't. It's like somebody who's got a product, and that's how they see it. They purely see it as a product. So if they've got a product, they'll find other ways of selling that product, and this is what the traffickers did. So we had to adapt during COVID, but we really adapted so well that last year, still under COVID conditions, we rescued 2,386 individuals. So. But anyway, back to now that the flights and everything opened up, usually you'll see in a lot of these countries, you'll see a combination of sex tourists and a combination of normal tourists, if I can put it that way, families. But at the moment, what our guys are seeing is 90% is just sex tourists. So it's like, and now you've got so many disadvantaged communities and people desperate for money, looking for work, and that's where the traffickers are taking over. And even stuff wherever you see, if there's conflict, so like we've got in one of our countries, we've got this conflict in the country, so people are basically, refugees are going into the neighboring countries, but the traffickers will position themselves there to prey on these people that are finding themselves in trouble and that are desperate. So yeah, it's a huge, like the World Labour Organization in their 2016-17 report had worked out that 1 million children were caught up in sex trafficking alone.
Wow.
1 million children.
Wow.
So sorry. So for us, we want to see the end of this crime. It's a crime against humanity. We want to see in our lifetime, our goals, we want to see the end of this. And that comes through the work we do, but also through people getting educated and realizing this problem and start asking the questions. Asking even like, I spoke at a university, they got me to come and speak. And I spoke there, and there was this one girl that after I spoke came and she hung around, and I could see she had something on her mind. So she came and found me, and she said, listen, I just want to tell you something. She said, I'm going to talk to my uncle. And this was after her hearing me speak. And she said, my uncle goes 4 times to 5 times a year over to Thailand. We never see any holiday pictures. We don't know what he's doing. And I'm going to ask him, what are you doing there? Because you'll have people travel, and unfortunately, a lot of people travel from the Western world. Like when we're undercover in these brothels and these bars and these karaoke bars, you'll hear accents from all over the world. There's Australians, there's people from, you can hear the South African accent, South Africans, there's people from Germany, Russia, you name it, all over the world who go there specifically as sex tourism. And a lot of times these people tell themselves the same lie over and over. They go, we're helping these children, we're helping these people. And it's a big fat lie. They use that just to, but for them, in the end of the day, they don't really care. For them, that's a commodity. And when you go undercover, you see the hard, cold reality of that these kids are purely a commodity. They'll have the kids and adults will usually a lot of times be parading up and down or be on dancing on a little platform, but they've all got numbers. Like when I had the privilege to go undercover with our permanent team in Thailand, we were in this one place, and I saw this young girl, and her number was number 43, and all the sex tourists around me saw her as number 43. Didn't care what her name was. They saw. So you basically order the girl, like so. So I said, can I have that girl come to me? So literally, I said, can I have number 43? And they would go and fetch number 43 and say, come and sit next to this girl. So she comes and sit next to me, but because we look at them differently. In long story short, spend time with her, talking to her, and what she doesn't realize, we kind of half interviewing them, working out their age and all of these things. And here I'm sitting next to a girl, and I call her Sugi, once again, not the royal name, but we know her name. And so they're sitting talking to Sugi, who the rest of the guys all sitting there just knew as number 43. And spoke to Sugi, and I asked her, in our conversations along the way, I asked her how she found herself in this place, selling her little body to dirty johns flying in from all over the world. And Sugi kind of, with her, just kind of mumbled under her breath that 4 months before me sitting there next to her, she was in school with her younger sister, and their ages are close together. They don't have big gaps in ages. And so her sister's 10 years old, so work out how old she is. And so she said she's in school with her 10-year-old sister. Life's good. Both parents are working. No problems. Unfortunately for her, dad suddenly dies. He dies in an accident. And she could see her mum struggling. Her mum wasn't the main income earner. Her dad was. So Suki, out of the kindness of her own heart, said, Mum, I can see you struggling. How about I go to the bigger city and find work? In her mind also thinking waitress, washing dishes, maybe even working in a factory. So she goes to the big city. Unfortunately, the traffickers get hold of her. And here they've railroaded her in selling her little body to dirty johns flying from all over the world. And in the conversation, I was just, and I kind of just asked Sugi, what is it that if you were in school, what is it that you wanted to do with your life? And, Aldwyn, I don't know if you've seen it, but if you've come across a person that tells you a dream, but you can see in their eyes, their body language, that dream doesn't exist anymore. It's been that hope that they had once was blown to smithereens. Like her eyes were on the floor, her body language just showed, and she kind of just mumbled, "Oh, I wanted to become a school teacher." So here you've got a beautiful little life that out of the kindness of her own heart, she's one that really affects me. Out of the kindness of her own heart, she was looking to help her family in their time of need. And she wanted to become an educator of the next generation. And these guys get hold of them and they use them purely as a commodity, destroying their dreams, and forces them into something they never ever, no child dreams that they have to do. No child sits there and go, you know what, I want to go and sell my body to guys flying in from all over the world. And yet this is what happens to these girls. I'm sorry, that's the one girl that affects me every time. But our job, see, us as Westerners, we've had the question, why do we, we started here in Australia 20 years ago. Why do we go into these places? Because we are part of the problem, us as a society. So we have to bring the solution. And that's why our guys go undercover. We'll do anything we can to rescue these girls, rescue these lives. They deserve just as much as any other child. They deserve a right to choose their own destiny, to follow their own dreams. The teachers, if they want to be a teacher, to help them get there, become a teacher. And so, that's what we see and that's what we face.
Oh, it's tragic. And that girl that wanted to be a teacher, were you able to rescue her?
Yes. So what happened, that whole place got set up for a raid. So it's not just her, but everyone else that got rescued. And then they get each set up on their individualized pathways of freedom. So she's on her own individualized pathway of freedom. So we help, so she's on the right path. She's right. She's walking into a destiny. And if I can help, I'll just, with this one story, I wanted to share the story because it's such an amazing story that one of a gentleman who's, he goes by many different names because he goes undercover himself, but he's in charge of all our undercover operations. And we give him different names. Today I'll just call him Dennis. So, but so Dennis, because he was involved with the international rescue, what he did early on is once the rescue agents dropped off the girls at the rescue centers, that's the last time there's interaction between them, is to protect the girls and to protect the undercover guys. So his side, he was just involved in the rescuing and organizing rescues, and that's all he was literally focusing on day and night on. So he found himself, he had to travel out of Thailand, fly into one of our neighboring countries. He had to go to one of the nations we're working in, and he was kind of half burnt out. He was tired, and he drove into Bangkok, and he stayed in this little cheap motel in a semi-industrial area close to the international airport because he had to fly up first thing in the morning. So he arrives there at 1:00 in the morning in this cheap motel, and realized there's no water. You get what you pay for, obviously. And he was like, okay, but he remembered seeing a 7-Eleven down the road. So he thought, oh, you know what, I need water. So he's walking down the street to the 7-Eleven, but he's got this anguish in his heart and he's just struggling. He says, I know we're making a difference, but are we? He was just this. It was nearly an existential struggle within his soul about this, because when you're facing if you see the dark side over and over and over, and you're not on the other side seeing what happens with the girls, and he set it up that way, it can create this anguish. And so And he's just like there, and he's kicking stones and walking down the street, mumbling, grumbly, and he's just like, I don't want to go, because he knows the country's got to fly him as a real tough country. Just the stuff we see there. So he's like just kind of preparing himself to go there. And it's one of our undisclosed nations. And there's a reason why we've got undisclosed nations. If you go on our website, it's because of political sensitive reasons. We can't mention that we're there. So anyway, he's walking down to the 7-Eleven. And as he comes closer to the 7-Eleven, he can see under the hue of the light of the sign, the 7-Eleven sign, he can see these two figures, but he can see that they're kind of focused on him. So as he's walking closer, he's realizing they're literally staring at him. As soon as he gets close enough, next minute they start running towards him. And as they were right on top of him, they literally launched on top of him, gave him this biggest hug. He recognizes them. He recognizes that he actually was personally involved in these two girls' rescue up in northern part of Thailand. And so he's like bewildered, 1 o'clock in the morning, semi-industrial area, and he's recognizing them. And he's like, what are you girls doing here? Because he remembered to rescue them 5 years before. So he's like, what are you girls doing here 1 o'clock in the morning? And his heart half sinking, what are they doing here? And they go, oh, didn't you know? He goes, no, what? And they go, no, when you dropped us off the rescue center, we went through our program, and Destiny Rescue helped us, and we ended up studying nursing. And we just came up from our shift, and they pointed to, and he could see in the distance the hospital, and said, we just finished our shift. And so here in the middle of nowhere, literally, 1 o'clock in the morning, he's got this encounter that he needed to remind him what we do makes a difference. It's a difference in these girls' lives. They're at a different place than where we found them. And we have sad stories that happen, unfortunately. But I don't want to traumatize your viewers too much. But for us, it's always about that next life that we can change and change it for the long term. And like I said, now we see the generational effect of these changes.
Amazing, extraordinary work you're doing, Marc, and all those at Destiny Rescue. And I'm sure there'd be times that the rescuers would be risking their lives. I'm sure at different times. I know there's a lot of corruption that happens in these third world countries particularly. And I'd say police would be being paid off and things like that. There'd be a lot of bribery going on as well in the background.
Yes,
I would imagine. Definitely. And dealing with all that, right? I mean, how would you deal with it? You report to the local police and they're corrupt as well.
What do you do? We had to learn the lesson the hard way. In the early days, there was no manual how to do this. A lot of times people ask if we were all ex-military guys, and I'm going, no, we're people got all walks of life. We've got plumbers, electricians, lawyers, different people from different walks of life that get involved and help. And that really actually helps when you go undercover, because all you're doing is going back to what you usually do, your 9-to-5 job. So if questions get asked, and especially under pressure, you can just, you can talk about plumbing, or you can talk whatever it is that you're doing. And but in the early days, some of our guys had knives pulled on them. At one stage, it was gunshots fired, but learned very quickly what not to do. Yes, and so now really well trained, know exactly what we're doing, and we've just blended in. They do not know the difference between us and the normal sex tourists. So that's the best way we keep safe. And also over time, we had to learn which police units to trust and which not. So in all of these countries, there's real good people who want to see change. And so fortunately, by doing it for 20 years, we've connected with the right groups and right people. So in each country, we've got federal or special police units that we work with that want to see the end of this as well. So it's a real partnership that we end up working with. So, yeah.
Wow. And of course, not just children being sex trafficked. This happens of women of all ages, I would imagine.
That's right. That's right.
Even in Australia here, it blows me away how many of these massage shops with the bright flashing, the flashing lights out the massage, and they're all Asian run.
That's right.
and they say open all hours, spas, etc. And I know men that have visited these places, and there are sexual acts being carried out in some of these places.
Definitely.
And it's happening all around Australia. I've seen it. And it blows me away how this is allowed to happen. Sure, there might be people doing massages, but then there's always happy endings offered. There's always extra, and a lot more than just happy endings with hand jobs. These are it's pretty full on what's going on out there. And I'm sure a lot of these workers would not be getting paid much either. They probably just get enough to live on, and there's probably drugs involved as well. Is there? Do you see much of that too, Marc?
Well, you got, like, for example, we had in the Philippines, we ended up doing a raid with police, and we were after this one. I'll just give you a little background on this one. We were really after trying to get this pimp. This pimp had a whole bunch of pimps that worked underneath him, but a lot of them didn't actually meet with him personally. So he was very careful how he orchestrated this. But his speciality was dealing in with children. And so he had all these pimps, and some of them were even females, handling different children at different places. But then it would be like this level up. And so he would get money from the pimps that he employed, but they would never really interact with. So we did this operation. We tried to capture him with the police, but he always seemed to stay one step ahead. And we tried to organize this raid, but he wasn't there. But one of his pimps were there. We tried to get her to say we lived or where he was residing to try and get hold of him, and she didn't know. And so while we're having this discussion, in this raid we rescued a couple of children and girls. And in the back of the van, where they were sitting waiting for us to take them to to the centers, we heard this little voice, because we were talking there to this little 14-year-old girl, quiet little voice says, "I know who he is. I know where he lives." And this little brave girl took us all the way through this rabbit warrant and took us right to his front door. And so when the police busted open the door, there he was, and he had in his house like 6 or 7 children in there, and they were on drugs and different things to keep them kind of subdued. But we caught them in the end red-handed. But yes, so they'll use alcohol, they'll use drugs, they'll use so many different ways to manipulate and keep them under control. So some children, they might not be in chains, but they will be chained in other ways. Through fear, they'll sometimes say, "Listen, if you don't do what we say, we will go after we know where your parents live, we'll go after your siblings. We'll tell your parents, your community what you're doing." That's why, with the videos we'll show it to, they'll use so many different ways of actually controlling them. And a lot of times, yes, and so even in the bars, like internationally, for example, people go to the bars, and because we've been undercover, you'll talk to some of these bar managers, and they'll go, "Oh, we're looking after these people, we're helping them, by giving them work in our bars." But what they'll do, they've got a system that each person working in a lot of, it's not all places like this, but I'm giving examples of some of them. They'll have a system where these girls what they do is they get like a budget they've got to meet, and in the budget they've got to get a customer to buy alcohol. And they've got a budget they've got to hit, buy alcohol for the customer, for himself, and buy for the girls, right? And so what they'll do is they've got to hit this budget every night. If they don't hit the budget, the whole amount becomes a debt against them. So even when they become 21, 22, they're still caught in debt bondage. They can't get out because this debt has just been building. It's like the house always wins. It's they just set it up, just another way of keeping them in bondage. So even when they get money, it's only a handful, because they've got to keep on paying the bar, the fees, to pay off that quota they've got to fulfill. So yes, they use different ways. And just to come back with, here in Australia, these massage parlors, I know whenever anything comes across our path, we always make sure we hand it off to the Australian Federal Police, and they've actually got quite a few operations in place where they are actually going after these owners, and they've cracked a whole bunch of trafficking rings through the time. So
Well, that's good. So we need to keep the fight going, keep being a stand for freedom, because not just is it damaging these young girls and young boys physically, there'd be the emotional, the mental, the psychological damage, which of course in the path to freedom, all those things also need to be dealt with, right? To actually help them have faith in humanity again and have something to live for.
Oh, totally.
And what a heavy topic. I must say I've been quite emotional through this interview, Marc, as you've been sharing, and I'm sure people watching this also can feel what's going on here and also want to help. We've got Susan here. She said she was raped when she was 12. She said no one saved her. Thank you for saving these babies. That's beautiful. Thank you, Susan. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thanks so much, Susan, for sharing.
And a lot of people have been raped. A lot of people in Australia. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. The sex industry is the oldest industry in the book, and obviously there's a lot of money in it. And those who want to make that, I guess, that easy money for them, using and abusing other people. I do believe the truth always comes out in the end. And I do believe in karma, Marc. These people, these perpetrators out there, these sick people out there, they must be very sick themselves. They must be seriously sick, because hurt people hurt people, and it will come back to them. Mark my words, it always does, one way or another. Not necessarily by the people they do harm to, but it comes back energetically one way or another. And, fantastic work that Destiny Rescue are doing. For those who want to support your cause, we've got Susan saying, how can we help these children? What can we do to help, Marc?
Well, we're a not-for-profit organization. So we're as a not-for-profit, we're registered in the US, in New Zealand, and here in Australia. This is where we started from. And so donations, because we've got infrastructure set up everywhere in all 10 different countries, and so literally it's money equals rescues. It's literally that. For just to give you a kind of example or background, for a single rescue, so if we take one child, rescue them, it costs us on average about $1,800 per child, because you've got not only rescue them, they go to rescue center and everything else involved in it, and we've got compound or facilities we've got to take care of, all of these things. So our CFOs worked it out about $1,800 per child is what it roughly works out on. And then the raid rescues, because with the raid rescues, we shut a place down, the traffickers get taken to custody, a court case has been built up against the traffickers, and everybody that's been trafficked in that place gets set free. So with those, on average, they cost us around nearly $10,000. And there's a lot of costs involved with them. Some are way less, some are way more. We've had one of our operations, we ended up rescuing just over 70 individuals out of that, and we needed actually a part what we had to get involved. We had to have buses, and you've got to suddenly have accommodation if you've got so many that floods in one night. And so that operation cost us definitely more than 10 grand. We actually, even that, it was so dangerous that the Special Air Forces Commando Unit actually had to help us get in there, because it was a compound that was guarded. The traffickers were carrying arms, etc., etc. So it was a bit different from our normal going undercover work that we had to do. But so money, and also if people want to help fundraising, that's another way. If people say, you know what, and fundraising can look like anything. It can be like, okay, I'm going to have a cocktail party at my house, invite friends over, and you can show a documentary, one of our 30-minute documentaries of some of our operations. We can have that, or we can come and speak at your place. Like, I'll talk to somebody's grandma about what we do, because seriously, more people than know, the better about what we do. But yes, help financially, spread the news, and also we've got a thing just for those that say, hey, I want to help on an ongoing basis. There's also a thing what we call rescue partners. Rescue partners is you partner with us and you go, okay, I'm going to, usually the average amount of rescue partners around the $55 a month. And then they just sign up. They can stop it whenever they want to. It's like, we don't say, oh, you're in a contract for the next 12 months or however long. You stop it whenever you want to. But then we've got people that say, you know what, on a monthly basis, I can do this. And then they partner with us, and that's called rescue partners. But please send a message. You want to know more, and I'll gladly have a chat to everybody.
Wonderful. And we've put the website there too, destinyrescue.org.au.
Yeah.
And there's a section there where you can donate and find out more about what this amazing charity are doing, destinyrescue.org.au. And a big thank you to all our fellow BX members, the BX networking members, because Destiny Rescue is the charity of choice for the year. And every time someone does a 40-minute introduction that goes over 40 seconds, 40-second introduction, not 40 minutes. We're going with 40-minute introduction, 40-second introduction, then they make a donation there. So thank you to all our BX business members there.
Massive thank you to BX.
All around Australia, New Zealand and the US as well that are donating to Destiny Rescue. There's something we can all do with this, and raising awareness is absolutely critical. And if you know something fishy is going on out there, something not quite right, and that if you know there is something going on that is not above board and that is hurting somebody, and if you don't speak up about it, then you are actually being a part of the problem. So I do recommend that anyone watching this right now, if you know of any of these perpetrators out there, if you know of any of these things happening, or even if it's a local massage parlor that you know are doing sex acts that are illegal. There are legal brothels, of course. That's a whole different story. There's legal and there's your illegal, and then there's the underage, and there are those that definitely don't want to be there, like the children we're talking about here today, have been totally used and abused and totally broken down. Can you imagine if this was your child? How would you feel right now if this was your child this was happening to? And I think that's the attitude really we need to take with this, is that this is somebody's child. This is a human being that deserves a life of freedom, that deserves better than what they're getting right now. And they're often in so much fear they don't know what to do. So there's something we can all do. So if you do see something going on, please do reach out. Even if you report it to Destiny Rescue or report it to the local police. The police could be corrupt, of course. So Destiny Rescue would be a good place to go to if you do see some unscrupulous operators out there, and you can definitely speak up and make a difference. Marc, I could chat to you all day about this topic. This has been absolutely fascinating. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
Yeah, just firstly, thank you so much for this interview, and I would also even say with the people viewing this, please share this link, share it around, because the more people know about it, the better. It's like anything. If the more you shine a light on a darkness, the more you'll expose it, the more open it gets, and people start talking about it, the more action it ends up happening. So yes, please share. That's probably my one takeaway. Share this with as many people as possible, so that we can spread the news about what's really happening out there. And this is not something we can. I've had people like saying, "Oh, I don't want to hear this." I'm going, "No, what? All respect, you've got to hear it, because this is an issue that we need to tackle. And the more we openly talk about it, the more we shine the light of it, the more we can deal with it." So yes, please share this around to as many people as possible.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Marc. And please comment on here too. Let us know what you got out of this today. Comment, share the love. This has been streamed today to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You'll see all my links at linktree/Aldwyn, linktr.ee/Aldwyn. Destiny Rescue, the link there, Susan. And for those wondering, destinyrescue.org.au. We'll make sure that link is across all three platforms if you're not seeing it right now. And really appreciate those who have joined us today, and those out there are doing an amazing job right now in this area. And it really does make a difference. It does, even if you save one life, right? It's worth stepping up and doing something here, even if you just save one life. Imagine the ripple effect of that. And these perpetrators, they'll get theirs coming back, don't you worry. They might get a little bit of short-term money here and there, but the long term, they're going to be in a lot of pain, I can tell you that. And they've got to live with their demons. They have to live with their demons every day. We may not know what all of them are doing, but they know what they're doing, and they can never run away from the lies that they tell to themselves, right? So
yes, totally.
So it will come back. And and I send everybody love, because there's a lot of hurting people right now. Some people are doing things out of desperation they don't want to be doing. And I'm sending you love wherever you are in the world, and let's all do something to help end this incredibly cruel practice of child trafficking. And let's be a stand for more freedom in the world, Marc, as we are. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Marc.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Aldwyn. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for everyone joining us. We will see you again soon. Please stay connected and subscribe to Media Queen TV if you haven't already on YouTube. We have over 800 videos on there now and some other amazing interviews there as well. So thank you once again, Marc. And remember, destinyrescue.org.au. Check that out. And a linktree/Aldwyn. You can connect on all my links there. And just in closing, one of my favorite quotes, as Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see in the world. And as I say, shine bright and light up all those around you. Blessings to you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon here at Media Queen TV. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you are in the world. We'll see you again soon. Thank you, Marc.